ganz große Freude und es ist wirklich eine sehr große Freude, jetzt einen Menschen anzusagen, der wahnsinnig viel Erfahrung hat im Blockchain-Bereich, im Kryptobereich, in der Gründung von einem Asset, in dem Fall Ethereum. Er war von Anfang an mit in den ersten Stunden dabei und ich bin wirklich sehr froh, auch hier Mihai Alisie jetzt zu begrüßen. Er ist auch einer unserer Sponsoren, AKASHA hier, AKASHA Foundation. Und a very, very heartful welcome to you. Mihai, it's your stage. Very welcome. Thank you that you're here.
Hello, thank you very much for the introduction, and hello to everyone watching this Crypto Valley Festival. Yes, very excited to be here, and you know, it's almost like a dream looking back like 6 years ago. Crypto Valley was nothing but a bunch of random people from around the internet united by this common vision of and passion for blockchain technology. And look at us, you know, a few years later having a festival and, you know, a bunch of other really cool ideas that we discovered along the way. And today I would like to look a bit at the bigger picture. And you know, in the agenda there we have like Ethereum, DeFi, decentralized autonomous organizations, and like the more I thought about it, like in the end it's all about communities. It's like the end goal of this blockchain thing is not so much the technology in itself, but rather what it can actually bring of value in our lives as humans. So it's a tool built for humans to serve humanity, not to rule it. That's what I like to believe, at least. And that being said, following the introduction of the AKASHA Foundation, I would just like to point out that as an initiative, we describe ourselves as a non-profit born at the intersection of blockchain and collective intelligence. And collective intelligence is one of the topics that I'm very passionate and fascinated about, because as social creatures, we humans do this thing without even knowing or realizing it. Whenever we find ourselves in a group, whenever we find ourselves in a bar, whenever we find ourselves at a football game in the stadium, we are unawarely participating into this like mind group. And my belief is that these technologies and these tools at our disposal will make this a lot easier and, you know, supercharged with superpower, so to say, because now with this technology we're able to move at light speed, not just information but also value, and this is quite a big one. We'll get back to this in a bit, but before we get there, this is a post on the Ethereum blog that I published in 2014 in July. I think it was the day when we also founded the Ethereum Foundation in Switzerland. And, you know, this is one of the first moments when I, like, you know, had the public interaction with the community that was forming around the technology. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. It's like these people are just drawn out of nowhere. It's like this technology was a beacon attracting these curious minds from all around the world. And in the second paragraph here, I like this quote: "A sea of minds brought together by the idea of a Turing-complete general-purpose blockchain is creating," as you're reading this line, "the Minecraft of blockchain technology." And, you know, it's like, wow, that was not so far off looking back. So this aged well, so to say, since 2014. And fast forwarding, this is also like another post I wrote like a year later in March 2015. And this is an excerpt from that post. It's a pretty long one. If you're interested in the ancient history of Ethereum, this is a good read. But the paragraph here that I'm highlighting was that the stage has been set. In less than a month since we first touched down at the Zurich airport, we had the Swiss entity up and running, a legal strategy starting to take shape, and a big up goes to the people from Open Transactions and Bitcoin Swiss for their help and the strategic Swiss networks they shared with us. So besides just the jurisdiction and the nice view and landscape where Switzerland has, we were also very lucky to get in touch with the beautiful people that were already playing, let's say, with blockchain, and Ethereum found its home. But before we get there, it's like it's important to understand a bit like the impact and the ramification, and after all, why were we even here? Here because I'm in Zug at the moment, so in the crypto valley, and besides the amazing and breathtaking landscape, what brought us here was that we found ourselves as like many many technology-driven projects, let's say, in this space. We started with it's like, yes, this Ethereum thing can be so revolutionary. It's like gonna change everything. And then it's like, oh wait, so we have this technology, and then there's gonna be like individual A, individual B, and individual C, which are going to be contributing and individually liable. And keep in mind that this was happening around 2014, and let's say the general perception of blockchain technology was not what it is today. It was a lot more fear-driven rather than curiosity, opportunity-driven. And many jurisdictions, it was like a bad idea, full stop, to start or establish the home base for a project like Ethereum. And we realized, though, along the way, is like, hey, we need a legal person that will help us to have, like, in a way, like a shield, because it wasn't just us that we were interested in being able to sleep better at night without fearing, all sorts of legal unforeseen consequences for building this technology. But also you have like employees and other people that are part of this, and like developers in this case, which, were like, hey, am I going to get in trouble for contributing to this technology? And as you can imagine, like everyone wanted to hear, no, everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be clear. But especially in that time, and I think to an extent also today, whenever you talk with lawyers about this sort of stuff, the general answer is, well, it depends. And then fast forwarding, this legal person needs to be somewhere in a legal jurisdiction. So on this note, we looked at a bunch of jurisdictions, including Singapore, Canada, Germany, UK, Netherlands, and a few others. And Switzerland was one of the most promising. But whenever you have this set up, you also have like other entities that would interact with the project through this legal person, like, for example, contractors and other organizations, partners, and so on and so forth. And like the square that is behind the 1, 2, 3 here in this graphic would represent how each of these entities are also part of other legal jurisdictions. And some of them can be legal persons, other can be natural persons, depending on how the relationship is established. But all in all, this was kind of what we were looking for, is like, hey, can we establish this legal person that would help us develop Ethereum, the protocol, the software, the clients, and be compliant and make sure that we won't get into at least too much trouble. And this has become, in a way, kind of the classic setup. Many projects then adopted this, and this is kind of the standard move these days. But in all cases, and this is something we'll get back to in like the second half of the presentation, in every classic legal person that there is available, be it a foundation, be it an association or a classic association, be it a for-profit entity like an LLC, an LTD, a GmbH, usually the community is something, when I say the community, this is the community formed around the technology. So that can be the open source contributors, they can be like meetup organizers, and these people that bring value to the ecosystem in other ways than code of lines, So for example, in Ethereum, we were very lucky, and I continue to believe that we are very lucky to have a very vibrant community of people passionate to, go organize events, hackathons, participate in them. And maybe this has taken a hit because of the whole, Corona situation. But in any case, this has been one of the key ingredients for Ethereum success, beyond just the technology and beyond this legal strategy that allowed us to build this without fear of, legal repercussions. And in a way, what we were seeking was reduced legal uncertainty and increased, legal protection. So it's a double-edged sword here. And, looking back, this was in a way what led us to Zug, the canton, and we were very lucky to, meet also Herbert Sterci and a bunch of other really great people that introduced us to the right people and so on. And during one of the meetings with the local economic development team of Zug, this was in 2014, early 2014, when we didn't have any entity established and so on, when I was trying to articulate and communicate, like, this can be an opportunity for Switzerland, this can be an opportunity for Zug, this type of technology that we are developing, or, we are dreaming about developing, this was in 2014, would position Zug in a very favorable kind of global arena to become one of the leaders in this emergent economy. And this was very well received, and as a meme, Crypto Valley, that was when I was like, Crypto Valley, that kind of propagated, and it took a life on its own. Another reason to be excited. And fast forwarding, to September, this is a screenshot from then. This page looks totally different these days, but for historical purpose, I'm just going to use this one. Ethereum, by leveraging these new concepts, these new platforms, and then this newfound home in the Switzerland as a jurisdiction, we managed to raise around $18.5 million at the time, and it was the biggest crowdfunding event in the history of the internet. So quite, epic in itself. And I would like to draw your attention on the fact that, number one there, Star Citizen, is a video game. And the reason why it has 74 million in this slide is that it was not a one-off crowdfunding campaign. So they had several crowdfunding campaigns that added, summed up, would give that total. But in the case of Ethereum, it was a 42 days one-time event. Why 42? Because 42. And when you look at the platform there, you have Bitcoin, because we used Bitcoin as a mechanism to raise the funds, and independent. And that's one of the interesting insights here, because when you look at this page again, you would see it as a platform. Many of the crowdfunding projects using Ethereum as the base layer, on top of which they replicated the success we had with Ethereum. And on the same day, like September 2, 2014, I published this post, but I was talking about this emergent crypto renaissance, and it was maybe a bit ahead of its time, but I still think we are in the midst of it, and what we're witnessing is still the beginning of what will be super huge. Basically this string of characters, the 36 PRZ and so on, this Bitcoin address was the address where people were able to send their Bitcoins in exchange for the promise of this Ether cryptographic receipt that would be usable when the Ethereum blockchain would be launched. And this, back in the day when we were doing this stuff, we did not have terms like ICO or token generation events or any of those things. We were still debating if crowdfunding would be an okay term to use. But, we ended up calling it a pre-sale, and now crowdfunding is okay. Anyway, you get the idea. Same for DeFi, which is kind of hard, decentralized finance these days. But back then in 2014, when I was trying to kind of convey this idea of the crypto renaissance, there is this highlighted portion in the bottom of the quote: the unfettered peer-to-peer worldwide digital finance grid is building itself up. And I think to a great extent, that is what we are witnessing these days. And just for some big picture viewing and understanding, this is a short video which depicts in fast forward mode token sales that happened between 2014 and I think 2018. So it's not up to date, but you would get, so now we have Ethereum popping approximated at 19 millions. And the colors of these dots would be representing the areas where you would have the token sales originating from. So in this case, you know, you have like Europe, North America, Middle East, status unknown, and Asia. And as you see, like, you know, the DAO, Ethereum, and all these things that are popping up here, this is like one of the accelerations, like people starting to see, oh, wow, this is something that I can also maybe apply for my company, for my project. And more and more and more and more projects. And as you can see, there is a predominance of the projects based in Europe that in turn, many of them have their home into the Crypto Valley. So, you know, Crypto Valley beyond just a fancy name that is cool, is actually representing the home base for many projects that make their life, you know, they live or die by the crypto. And on the same note, what is important here to note is that Ethereum in itself is a living social organism, which means that, you know, you see in this video, you see how the contributions made via GitHub, so this is mostly code contributions, are highlighted in this video. And you have like the lines that you see here, those are the contributions, and the structure itself of the code and how these parts work. And, you know, if you look at currently we are in April 2015, and as you go, there are certain milestones, like, you know, there was the DAO hard fork, and there were a couple of attacks during a conference, and you can see how this organism was able to adapt and to change and to evolve, to meet, to adapt to the environment, to overcome the challenges and the attacks. So to me, this is again like fascinating. And for many people, when they think of Ethereum, they think either in terms of money, either in terms of tech, but many times they miss the most important piece, which is this community, the people that are actually building the tech, which actually the network effects established by these people directly impact also the monetary valuation of this project and its usefulness, its utility. And another interesting topic that, you know, since its earliest announcement, like Ethereum, because both myself and Vitalik came from the Bitcoin community, and, you know, with Bitcoin Magazine, we really try to outreach and to spread the word of what this technology can bring into the lives of people. And, you know, when the Ethereum came up, I was like, whoa, are these guys friends or foes? And what about this Ethereum thing? And, you know, there have been many people either falling into a camp or another, you know, like Bitcoin went all the way, Ethereum no way, and the other way around. And in the end, you know, there are also a bunch of people in, let's say, in the center, which see the value and how each of these pieces of the new economic financial puzzle are, you know, able to coexist, and not only coexist, but actually to help each other in interesting ways. So on this note, for example, this slide, this is a recent post from the Ethereum. This is like one of the most popular community forums used by the Ethereum community. And this is where I spotted this, how, you know, the wrap Bitcoin is one implementation of allowing DeFi, so decentralized finance protocols, to use Bitcoin as well. So this means, you know, people that hold Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain would be able to use this service, and in exchange for locking those Bitcoins and being unable to use them on the Bitcoin blockchain, they can now use this this wrapped Bitcoin on the Ethereum blockchain to access, you know, all of these services and DeFi games and so on and so forth. And one of the interesting analogies or metaphors that I've seen in this particular thread, when you try to explain, okay, wait, what Bitcoin on Ethereum? And the explanation goes like this. So whenever you go to a casino, you know, it's not about gambling here, although there is certainly an element of chance in all this, you know, cryptocurrency space. But the metaphor applies to the fact that you don't go with your credit card, or you don't go with, you know, cash in your pockets to bet for the slots, or to bet for blackjack or roulette or whatever it is there in the casino. When you go there, you put in some money, and in exchange of those money, you get some chips, with those chips representing the value of the money that you put in. At the end of the session, after you enjoy the casino to its full extent with all the things it has to offer, you say, okay, I'm calling it a night or a morning, depending on how long you spend there. And then in exchange for the chips, hopefully by the end of the session you have more, you would get in return the cash, so, you know, the money that you initially put in. And to an extent, this is what happens also in this case. You know, the Bitcoin is now becoming usable in this paradigm with all the Ethereum ecosystem and all the financial services. And if the user at some point wants to exit the Ethereum ecosystem, he would basically burn the wrapped token that lives on the Ethereum blockchain, and then he would be able to use the Bitcoin that he has on the Bitcoin blockchain. So I'm oversimplifying it a bit, I'm aware, but just as a, you know, big picture idea, we don't need to go into the nitty-gritty details. And similarly, this is an older post, but again, like a good one, from May 2018, when during a fireside chat with Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, he said, like, Ethereum might be the new Apple. And, you know, like, I take this as a good thing, not as a bad thing, depends on what side you are. But the point he was trying to make here, because, you know, the presenter was like, so which one is better, Bitcoin or Ethereum, and so on. And Steve Wozniak actually had an interesting comeback to this. So he said Bitcoin is like digital gold, so a different kind of thing. And Ethereum is more of a platform. And then he draws a parallel with when Apple was started, how Apple II, the computer, was a platform. And, you know, then he goes, here's all the documentation, open source. You can see how you develop parts. Look at the examples we have done, how to develop software, how to modify the software in here. And then he goes on, it was a platform for others, so thousands of companies started up, sometimes high school kids started their own company, and or ICOs these days, and they put up a little ads in the, for my product, Apple II. So then you also have this other interesting paragraph, which I think, you know, it's quite striking similarity, how everybody in the world was advertising for us and we didn't have to. So platform is how the world can grow by opening up to millions of other smart people. So in a way, exactly what we have reached with Ethereum and how we have set up this. And there was also, you know, a series of decisions leading up to the point where we said it's going to be a non-profit, because this also created, like, in a way, a Linux type of safe environment where the company, so Ethereum, if it wouldn't have been a foundation, so, you know, like the meme there was like, do we want to be kind of a crypto Google or do we want to be a crypto Mozilla? And the crypto Mozilla vision won here. But if Ethereum would have been a for-profit in this case, we would have lost this very valuable proposition, I think, in the sense that if someone, you know, like we have this DeFi type of services popping up left and right, if the entity developing and maintaining the Ethereum protocol would have seen that, they might have had an incentive of, like, you know, copying this and offering it as an official Ethereum product. So this would have created a very weird incentive incompatibility between the maintainers and developers of the ecosystem, Ethereum as a whole, the network effects and the protocol technology, smart contracts, and so on and so forth, and the people that would develop, and not only people, but also organizations and so on. So in the big picture, I think this was one of the good strategic moves that we took there. And to wrap up with this, you know, the Steve Wozniak insight, the last paragraph says, the product that changed my life the most from Apple isn't the iPhone. And it's like, whoa, it's the App Store, the apps that are in the App Store. Third-party apps developed by all the people with all the ideas all over the place. And that's an example of a platform. So the parallel he's doing here, it's about how the App Store, in a way, if you want to use this metaphor, for is, in this case, the ecosystem of all these decentralized applications and services that use smart contracts on the Ethereum protocol. And if we look at the continuing, this Bitcoin versus Ethereum narrative, although highlighting that these are synergies that we're seeing here. Bitcoin, as more of a digital gold property cryptocurrency, maybe it doesn't make that much sense to be moved so often. I mean, it depends on the markets, obviously, and demand and all that. But at the same time, seeing how Ethereum is able to have double the transaction value of Bitcoin is quite impressive, but at the same time, not unexpected. Because, in part of those transaction volumes and the amount of money that is settled every day, there's also a part in Bitcoin. So, it's like the lines between the two are not so clearly defined anymore. So you have like this intertwining of destinies and ecosystems in economies that naturally emerges between all these other blockchains. So it's not just Ethereum, it's not just the Bitcoin. There are, hundreds, thousands of others. And I believe in the future, there will be this increased drive towards more interoperability and seamless value transfer also across ecosystems. And, to an extent, this decentralized exchange, let's say, craze is also something, when I entered the Bitcoin space in 2011, one of the holy grails there, is like, yeah, but it's not decentralized because we have to rely on these exchanges. And, that was like empty Gox and a bunch of others are now, long time gone. But there were like many lessons, painful lessons for many investors that just kept their money on exchanges that went belly up. So similarly, when we look at the promise, the initial promise and thinking behind the Bitcoin as a white paper, the electronic peer-to-peer cash system, you now have like two of these initial intentions delivered. So not just, brainstorm, delivered by the Ethereum protocol. So on one side, you have the electronic peer-to-peer cash system in the form of stable coins and many others there that are more suited to cash type transactions that, moving one Bitcoin from A to B. And then on the other side, you have like this whole inflow and outflow between these ecosystems that kind of point to this decentralized exchange being one of the killer apps indeed of this ecosystem. One of the, probably there will be many to follow. And, just to make, to go a bit outside just, cryptocurrency and so on, there are also a bunch of like super interesting experiments happening around Ethereum. I think today or yesterday, I saw this post where a university is seeking now to send or to test how Ethereum, in this case, a private Ethereum blockchain, how it could have various satellites to coordinate and communicate better. Which, in there somewhere, there's also a joke about going to the moon, but I'm going to leave that for you to fill in. And coming back now to the, AKASHA story and what happened along this time for me, after, we had the initial structure in place and Ethereum, had like a home base, we had the legal strategy in place, we had bank accounts, oh my God, don't get me started on that. We had a bunch of things that are kind of basic business infrastructure, so nothing too complicated, but we were already pushing the boundaries with the thing we were trying to develop here. So, on one side, having like a more classic legal person and, classic bank accounts and all these things were compensating for the fast forward pace that we had on other dimensions and layers. And after the Ethereum Genesis happened in 2015, in July, that was a moment for me, after I seen like, wow, block 1, oh my God, block 100, block 1,000 and so on. That was like the moment for me. It was like, wow, all the efforts, all the tears and, of joy, of course, and the blood and the sweat that went into this project. And we went and we talked to these people and we got things moving, finally converging to this moment where this is no longer just a dream. This is no longer just a cool idea you talk about to your friends and sometimes maybe too much, but it was something real. It was no longer just a dream, but it was a platform enabling other people to build their own dreams. So kind of like Inception in a way. And that was also a moment when during this time especially between the moment when we conducted the crowdfunding campaign and until the Ethereum blockchain was actually released and we had the genesis and all that, I was constantly thinking about like what are the new things and the coolest things that we can now use this technology, and what are the big problems that before this were unsolvable, quotes, and can we do something about it? So that's how in May 3rd, 2016, after months of prototyping and testing, we announced AKASHA, which, as a word, by the way, quick note, stands for Advanced Knowledge Architecture for Social Human Action. And as a word root, it comes from Sanskrit and it means ether. And also has like some really nice metaphysical connotations there. But the point here is that we saw the problem of censorship and how you have these centralized indexes being the source of truth as something that we can now work around, because now we would have a decentralized index that would be transparent, visible to everyone, and they could choose what they get from there. And of course, because when you have social networks and social media, it's not just text, it's also like pictures, it's also videos, it's also audio, and blockchain in general is not really designed to store data. It's more to keep track of transactions. And storing data on blockchains is super expensive and also like not very scalable. And this is why we used two complementary technologies. So on one side, you had the Ethereum blockchain, and on the other, you had the interplanetary file system, or shortened as IPFS, to provide the distributed file system to kind of hold the video, as an example, with the smart contract living on the Ethereum blockchain just pointing with a hash. Hey, this is where you can find this video. And what happens is that actually between the nodes, so you have like an AKASHA app here, user A, and the user B on the other side. When you send the video or you watch the video, that data, the video itself, is not necessarily routed to the AKASHA servers. So that would be peer-to-peer distributed among the users themselves, which, at every point we try to remove ourselves as much as possible from the middle of the information flow. And since 2016, we've worked really hard, and we released 3 fully functioning decentralized applications. The first one was a desktop app, which basically when you were installing the AKASHA app, you were installing bundled an Ethereum node and an IPFS node. So your computer was becoming a node in the network from the get-go, and lowering, the user experience barriers. At the time, it was like, wow, finally a decentralized app people can use. And beyond that, we learned many things. And we had also a beta, which was initially a desktop app. And then we've rewritten the IPFS part to work in the browser. And this was like close to summer 2018 towards 2019. And that was a moment when we reached the level of like, so for example, you would have an AKASHA social network tab open in your Chrome or Firefox, whatever you're using. And when you're watching and scrolling in your feed and you see like pictures, videos, posts from other people, you're not actually getting that data from us. You would actually, your tab in your browser would communicate peer-to-peer with the other tabs of the people you're actually getting the information from. So technically speaking, it was an achievement, a milestone. It's like, wow, this can work. It's like, why do we need decentralized, wow, in our bubble? But then at the same time, reality hit. And you have the problem of user experience and slow loading time, because the information needs to find across various nodes until it actually gets to you. And for example, you have other problems, like when I post something and I close my computer before that information gets to spread into the distributed network, when you try to access that, the file is not available, because no node in the network has that information. So you have always pros and cons, and these are on the con side. And this is how in 2019 I started this series of posts, which I should continue probably, speaking about the metamorphosis in our thinking and how we realized that what we were doing was, just a stepping stone towards what we should actually do. And to sum it up, in again, oversimplified terms, basically, even if we initially wanted to do a social network that, was transparent and working in the interest of the people, and it would be decentralized, and any power asymmetry would be quickly identified and addressed. Still you have like a philosophical question. It's like, hey, you want to build a decentralized social network. Okay, so then you have the decentralization as the technological aspect. But when you look at the fact that there would be one social network, again, that's like centralized. So it's like centralization for decentralization, not really aligned, philosophically speaking, with what we had in mind and the goal and what we were aiming for. And this is how in 2019 and since then, we've started working on a framework. And, like during this time when we built these three fully functional applications and so on, we also got, let's say, a bit better at building blockchain-enabled social networks. And the idea here would be, what if we can compress all the knowledge and all the years in which we have developed, and trial, error, and at some point, yes, success, into an experience that would enable anyone from anywhere to kind of spawn their blockchain enhanced or enabled the social network. So in a sense, even if it's not an accurate comparison, you can think of something like the WordPress for social networks. And that would mean, just like with WordPress, you can have like at your own domain and you can have your own blog or form, or, you have a bunch of templates there. You can imagine something similar with the AKASHA Word Framework, where you have like a cause, a community, or something that you see well suited for this type of social network setup, and you take this and you deploy your own social network. And it comes with some advantages, and it also, I think it's more aligned to that vision of decentralization, because it's not just one, it's a network of networks. And the problem, and here is, we come back to where we started, AKASHA and, the foundation and the setup and so on, more or less we applied the lessons we learned and the setup that we did with Ethereum as well. So, you have the foundation lives in the Switzerland jurisdiction. This is the legal person. I am, one of the people A, B, C, D there. And the technology that we are developing is this framework. But the problem, again, as I said in the beginning, is that the community that is so critical, especially when you're talking about open source projects and social networks that live or die by the contributions and adoption of these communities, are still not protected and are still left outside the let's say, the shield, the legal shield and the legal protection. And everyone is on their own. And there have been some experimentation on this like governance layer and so on. And, more recent, we saw this trend towards using tokens as the signaling mechanism for all sorts of governance systems. And, in a nutshell, we have a couple of examples here. This token would be distributed somehow and purchased by the community. And the community could then use this token to signal to some legal person that is based in some legal jurisdiction what they should do in relation to the technology and how that should progress moving forward. And, in theory, it sounds kind of okay. But the problem is that in reality, what is actually happening is that you have this relationship where the community is given like, hey, here's a token. And you're basing this on kind of like a social contract where the legal person says or takes the engagement in front of the community, hey, these votes that you're doing with this token, we'll keep in mind and consider those, and actually whatever the community decides, we will do. However, if there is a conflict, let's say between, the legal person in interest, a conflict of interest between the legal person and the community, ultimately the entity that has the ultimate say would be the legal person, because those people are the ones that are liable. And, on the other side, you have like this faceless mass of people that just have some tokens, or more or less, And just as an example on how one of these setups, Compound is one of the the trendsetter, so to say, this year with how they implemented the governance model using their token. And as you can see here, you have like a bunch of recent proposals, and there was like, for example, a Uniswap improvement strategy, the Uni token support, and so on and so forth. And then you also have that it was executed. So at the protocol level, probably this means that the compound is now compatible with these things that were proposed initially by the community. And under that, you can also see that the top addresses by voting weight, you have the A16Z, Polychain Capital, and a bunch of others that have a vote weight. And then, like 3%, 1%, and so on and so forth. And the numbers of proposals where these entities have voted. Now, when we go to that left side, the legal person, you see at the bottom of the page that there is this entity, the Compound Labs Incorporated, which I assume this is the legal person behind the technology, because just as we had these problems with, the individual legal liability and so on, these developers also wanted some legal certainty, and probably this was how they thought they can get it. And this is, by no way, is like no criticism or anything. I'm just kind of pointing out what's out there and covering. This is one way, we saw a bunch of other companies doing a similar setup where you have these tokens used as a proxy for signaling your decision and the community agreement. Another model, like more radical, it's these of decentralized autonomous organizations, where kind of like the token represents, again, like the governance system in a way, and the technology that is going to be developed and so on could also have like this type of proposals, and the members of the community can vote. The problem with the DAOs, and is like, why don't we have more DAOs? My assumption here is that the legal jurisdiction aspect is completely missing from the picture. And, you have on one side these people crying, it's like, code is law. Yes, maybe, but that doesn't make the existing laws evaporate. You are still based in some jurisdiction, and there are some clear advantages to having like, a legal person there in place. And one of them, like, for example, being that these individuals being part of a DAO have absolutely zero like legal protections. And because there is no legal jurisdictions, they're actually liable in all legal jurisdictions. Like, wait, what? And then it's for every single one of the individuals, because they're not formed or part of a legal person, they're also personally liable in whatever jurisdictions they are based in, So it's like, if in one jurisdiction it's like, yeah, DAO's not going to do that in this jurisdiction, then they would be directly liable for whatever this entity would do and affects this jurisdiction. So anyway, all in all, I would say that the main value propositions of these decentralized autonomous organizations are highlighted by the transparent resource management, because you have these addresses, these smart contracts, these transparent balances that can be audited. And then on the other side, the decentralized governance aspect. And we'll get back to the decentralized part in the next slide here, where, Curve is another quite popular decentralized finance protocol. And in August, there was this, happening where in an overreaction, the founder staked too many tokens, and this showed how centralized in a way this whole governance is. And I think to an extent this also gets back to the point that when you look at the way people have tried to approach the decentralized aspect of governance, they mostly focused on the technology. And that went with putting the social contract on chain. And, it also comes with the problems of having all these on-chain interactions in form of gas costs. And it's, again, pros and cons. But when you look at the actual decentralization that should be given by these tokens, this economic representation and abstraction, usually you have like between the top 10 to top 50 addresses having more than half of the token. So, you know, in some sense, it's like actually less decentralized than maybe what you would get in a traditional entity with a traditional legal person and, you know, the checks and balances that you have in place there with shareholder agreements and so on and so forth. And, you know, when you look at the way, this is like from the page of Curve Finance, you know, it's like it's fully decentralized with the launch of the DAO, but there is this emergency DAO which is able to pause the pools, and it has 9 members and 59.999 support and a 51% quorum curve emergency DAO. So anyway, this is kind of like an escape valve. Oh my God, things are not going well, and you activate kind of the red button here. And the last line here is kind of like, oh, okay, Curve will be transitioning to a DAO to be fully decentralized. So again, decentralized is the keyword here. And it's like, okay, this DAO is not decentralized, so we'll do another DAO, so we'll be fully decentralized. I'm not really following the logic. I want to focus today, and what I wanted to bring to discussion is another take on decentralization. And just as we had, you know, with the pros and cons of having a fully decentralized social network and the user experience, the loading times, and so on and so forth, I think when you look at decentralized in the decentralized autonomous organization and so on, decentralization does not always refer to the technology. It does not refer to the economic wealth distribution either. My take is that decentralization refers specifically to decentralized governance. And for decentralized governance, you don't always need like this complicated on-blockchain thing. So, for example, if there are 1,000 people in this Zoom call and we say, you know, we're gonna make something a super cool decentralized experiment now, and whoever does live now in this call the most push-ups will have the most say in whatever decision we will have as 1,000 participants. So my take here is that this would be, from a governance perspective, more decentralized than, you know, just a bunch of addresses having over 50% of the say. Because, you know, there is a limit to how many push-ups a person can do. In terms of financial, the model that we currently have in DAOs and this economic token used also as governance, the bottom line is that the people with the most money will have the most say. And, you know, at least personally, when I signed up and started this whole Ethereum thing, that's not what I had in mind. And I think we can do better. And at least as long as we acknowledge that there are other ways, that's one out of many, I think we're on a right track. So it's like normal to experiment until you find like the best suited forms for the best use cases. So that being said, for the last few months, especially driven by this idea of like having these social networks that are built with the AKASHA framework, we reached this interesting decentralized autonomous associations concept, which is a work initially started by Sebastian Burger from Validity Labs. And since then, you know, it has went through a bunch of iterations. And what I'm going to talk about today is like one flavor out of many. So this is like, I would say, a separate species compared to DAOs. Very similar in some senses, but in some senses, but also quite different in others. And when it takes to, you know, the decentralization, what I'm going to kind of introduce here is the concept of minimum viable centralization. So what are the areas where you really don't need the blockchain, but you can still ensure the decentralization governance aspect? And you can use the blockchain wherever it makes the most sense. And, you know, if we compare it to the DAOs, you still have the main value propositions as transparent resource management and decentralized decision-making on how those resources are going to be spent. So I think we can have that plus lowering the legal uncertainty and providing a legal person that can actually, you know, provide peace of mind to the members of this new type of vehicle of collaboration. So again, like, you know, boxes and circles, we have a legal jurisdiction just as we had before, but in this case, it's Switzerland, right? And then inside this jurisdiction, we have a legal person. And in this case, it's going to be an association that has the articles of association tweaked in a way that basically makes this association as a blockchain native association. And here is the interesting bit. compared to the other scenario where the community was outside the legal person, the community is inside the legal person. And I think this is like one of the most important takeaways in this presentation. So if by now, you know, it's like blah, 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 if this is something you can take away, this would be a huge win. There are ways in which you can architect legal frameworks to leverage the software capabilities and the value transfer while also increasing the legal certainty and lowering the, you know, all the bad stuff that could happen, because there is no certainty in many jurisdictions. In Switzerland, though, different story, different case. So in this case, you know, if the community are the members that are part of the General Assembly within the association, we talked about the social network as an example. The social network here is the technology that would be developed, right? So you have on one side the community, which can be also users of the social network, but is not, you know, always like it. You can be also a user without not being a member of the association. And this software platform, this social network, is based in Switzerland, right? So it has to comply with some local laws, but it also has to comply with some guidelines and bylaws passed by the community itself in the legal person. And this is where it's quite interesting, because also in exchange, you can have these interactions with the legal person, with other legal persons. So the individual members of this association, this DAA, if they want to interact with others and, you know, as a community, they now have this legal person that is able to speak on behalf of the community. So it's not, you're not necessarily talking with an individual, you're talking with this meta legal person. And coming back to the idea of like these social networks and these networks of governance, this is how I see things could evolve. So you for every social network that you have there, you also need to think about the governance. And I think, you know, to an extent, this is why it's so hard to tackle the problems of moderation, because it's not all about tech. It's also about the jurisdiction, the laws, and the things, and how the governance in itself is done. And, you know, this could also be summed up as, to an extent, algorithms of autonomy that can be customized and applied to whatever context you have. So, you know, going back and, you know, to kind of wrap up this presentation, already long, but I hope you enjoyed it. From the initial crypto value, you know, a bunch of people that came to Zug and then, you know, visited the local economic development team of Zug and presented this idea and so on. We had a number of evolutions of the crypto valley meme. So, and, you know, one of the first ones was the crypto valley area, because it was not just Zug, it was also Zurich and other cantons around. They started to, was like, oh, crypto, interesting. Maybe we should also do some of this. And the next one was, you know, Crypto Nation, and this was like, whoa! This is, you know, this is what I was referring to. This takes a life of its own. And this is, you know, an excerpt from 2018, when the ex-president of Switzerland, Johann Schneider-Ammann, said that, you know, Switzerland should become crypto valley. This good thing that is in Zug should not stay there and should spread out throughout the country. And moving forward, you know, in March 2019, this is another quote from Willy Maurer. I hope I'm pronouncing correct. And I'd like to draw your attention on something really important. The last paragraph there that's highlighted. The government recently started a consultation process to update financial and corporate regulations to bring them in line with blockchain technological advances. So to me, this they're thinking about how to bring the laws in line with the tech. To me, this is like already is like 10 steps forward to other jurisdictions that are trying to fight this from the other position. So, starting next year, we also have this, you know, experiment with the taxes. This actually was initially quite a small experiment. I think it was up to a few hundred francs, but now we are going to, I think, something like you can pay up to 100,000 Swiss francs in taxes directly using Bitcoin and Ether, which, you know, this is where crypto native organization, like, you know, this association becomes very interesting, because now, you know, some of the problems that you had initially, and why, you know, going back to the meme evolution, you also had this crypto valley ecosystem. This was something that I heard a bit more recently. And because the banks in general, you know, are kind of reluctant when it comes to cryptocurrency. It depends on the bank, of course. And certainly there are more banks today than there were in 2014 open to the idea of like something blockchain, something crypto. But this was, for example, an opportunity for Liechtenstein and, you know, a bunch of banks like Bank Frick, for example, that, you know, oh, so you have a company in Switzerland and there are no Swiss banks that are willing to work with you, we'll work with you. And this is how, you know, the Crypto Valley kind of spread more than just the Crypto Valley area and Crypto Valley Nation to the ecosystem. And I think, you know, all in all, this is will, you know, go back and forth. And I think we will see some interesting developments in the future. And yeah, what next? What comes next? It's hard to say, but there are a few things that we can look around. And for example, you know, Estonia has an interesting, it's quite a neighbor, has an interesting program with e-residence, and it's one of the most advanced, let's say, in Europe, at least in this regard. And one of the things they lead with and why they say this is a cool thing for you and how they present the value proposition is that you can, as a digital entrepreneur, you can start and manage a EU-based company online. And to me, you know, like this association and the Decentralized Autonomous Association that would be incorporated in Switzerland and so on could also play to these strengths and also like add things on top, because, you know, you have the blockchain, you have the cryptocurrency aspect, you have the legal certainty, you have the legal frameworks, you have a bunch of things that are super valuable to entrepreneurs and big businesses that want legal certainty. They don't want, you know, room for questions and it's like, what if? This is also an interesting quote from the president of Estonia, where, you know, it's quite a small country, little over 1 million of us, and we can make 10 million payments, perform 10 million requests, and sign 10 million contracts in just 10 minutes, right? So my hope is that the next time, you know, we'll look at this, we'll also be able to say something at least as impressive, if not more impressive, by Switzerland and how it's able to, you know, even if relatively in like population, it's quite a small country compared to others, it can still do great things, you know, with what it has now in its hands. And as an interesting experiment, this is what was born out of a hackathon. Some developers used the Estonian e-residency card to generate the keys for an Ethereum wallet, right? So this means that you have now a trusted source that can be used to generate these keys, and you also have some kind of mechanism that could be used to recover your keys. And this could also be like a very interesting gateway into how, for example, you know, Zug and Switzerland as a whole, if it starts to think about how this can be leveraged and integrated within the layers of the daily social operations and, you know, administration of the cantons. And it's big picture and quite impressive. These are the things where I think it could benefit greatly from increased transparency, increased efficiency, lower costs, all the good stuff that, you know, an efficient governance system would look like. And speaking of governance, and I'm nearing the end of my presentation, there are also some interesting, so I think this is definitely a trend. We are now on the edge of, like, I think there's going to be a huge explosion of governance models in 2021. And from the Linux Foundation, this is a post that was published on 15 October. I highly recommend to read it. It also talks about the challenges and how they are actively searching for solutions on how this, you know, blockchain thing seems like a piece of the puzzle, but still this is an unsolved problem. And coming back to this, you know, is like, to an extent, it feels like this experiment and what we are working with here in order to make, like, you know, on one side you have the legal entity and on the other side you have the software that is governed by the legal entity, and then the software itself can be evolved to provide the tools with which the legal entity is governed. Is like quite an interesting feedback loop that can improve, and like the community itself can evolve. So it's not something that you put on top of, you know, this is the governance, you do tokens. And in this line of thought, there are also very interesting papers. And this is, again, like a very highly, I'm not a big fan of the modular politics. Maybe I would go for modular governance. But that being said, the authors did a great job of highlighting how, for example, the classical governance typologies tend to present a choice among a wholesale of ideologies, such as democracy or oligarchy. And modular politics would enable platform operators and their users to build bottom-up governance processes from computational components that are modular, composable, highly versatile in their expressiveness, portable from one context to another, and interoperable across platforms. So if you take that and you put it as social networks, you get some like really interesting ideas. So, you know, suddenly the moderation guidelines that are applicable and what is accepted in one community do not have to be the same across, you know, 2 billion people, like the problems Facebook faces. And again, if like your social network is based in a different jurisdiction, you have different laws that you need to follow and so on and so forth. So this, by bringing this decentralization within like the tech and the governance layer, would enable many systems and many governance experiments to go side by side. And I think in the future, we would observe some patterns that behave better in some contexts and, you know, others would in other context would do better. And we're still super early. And this is also like another example of how moderation, which is like a super complicated topic, could take place and could work within a social network implementing this modular politic concept. And all in all, you know, to take the point home, this and what we are working with AKASHA and like the point behind the smarter communities at the local, regional and global level comes also from the interoperability of these things, also without necessarily imposing your views on another community. So if you do not resonate with that community and you don't want to be part of it, that's fine. But there are others that resonate and want to be part of that. And we should be able to provide them the tools with which they can make their community better to reflect whatever they believe in. So if they have values that do not resonate with yours, they can build and evolve their own system, and you are free to build your own. So it's like, I think to an extent, this also tackles the problem of freedom of expression and collective freedom of expression. And this also, I think, points to what I'm currently kind of describing as decentralized autonomous social networks, because social networks in general are like still operated by an entity, be it Facebook or Twitter or whatever. You know, you have like an Inc. and an LTD, a foundation, something in the back. And this would be a leap forward, I think, because this is the part where people are now able to organize better, to coordinate action, and to fund that action across the globe. So this is the part where the global reach and this universal finance layer can be used to organize coherent and efficient local action, which is like priceless, you know, in a way. And I think, you know, this is what we need more of, community governed social media, where there is no top CEO or like person somewhere in an ivory tower deciding for billions of people what can be said and what can be not, and leave this ultimately to the people that are there to decide, you know. It's almost like we find ourselves in the ancient Greek landscape where, you know, you had the agora, but this public square is no longer private, and you have this someone that decides who can get in, what can be said, what cannot be said. Oh, you said that, you're out. So that's a very dangerous proposition, and I think, you know, the work and the landscape and what Switzerland has provided us give us the right environment to test these ideas, and I'm super grateful for that. And on that note, the first social network that will apply and combine these concepts together will be Ethereum.world. And in the next 2 months, we will announce a lot more. If you want to stay up to date, go on Ethereum.world and you will you can subscribe. And we will release gradually the application and then the legal entity, and we will work on how these things can work together so we can provide almost like a kit. Spawn your blockchain-enabled community, you know, on the get-go. And, you know, to apply it here, this would mean also that because it's going to be in the Ethereum ecosystem, there's also room for, because we refused with AKASHA to do an ICO during the whole ICO craze, any community can also be free to create its own currency, its own value, and to tap into the existing social capital that is present in these communities, but not abstracted or presented in a way that is made useful economically. So I think this will give us the tools, and I don't know, I'm super excited about the future, and I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I invite you to keep, to stay up to date with what we're doing in case you found these ideas interesting on akasha.org, ethereum.world, and thank you for your attention. I see it's on the clock.
Yes, you are really on the point here. Thank you so much, Mihai. I'm puzzled. I'm impressed what you can send out in this small hour, but on informations, it was really, really impressed. What do you know about that? And you have a big vision in your mind. I feel that, I think. And thank you for your presentation. It was great. And I have a question there from...
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And every time again, please. Konstantin, have a question. What do you think about the idea of voting, for example, to hold presidential elections on the blockchain? There are a voice against it, but by my limited technical understanding, it would make sense.
So first of all, it's like whenever you involve new technologies in processes that have so wide reach, it's always, it's like we should probably start lower. So instead of going straight to president, probably better to do something smaller, like I don't know, a council election, something local, and then if that goes well, then you grow. So that's the first point. The second is that the blockchain in general, at least the normal blockchain without any new things on top, it's transparent, and that can also be a bad thing in the case of elections, because many times the way or who you voted for can be also, depending on where you are living, used against you. So it's like I'm voting for that person, and then the dictator comes and is like, give me that list of addresses and who voted against me. Yeah, bring them bring them to me. I'll have a chat with them. So unless we have a way, and I think we are almost there, unless we have a way in which we can ensure on one side the unicity of the person that has voted and have a zero knowledge of what the vote was actually, casted, the system of blockchain can be used indeed in interesting ways for elections. But as it is, blockchain is simple, it's not very well suited. So it needs these extra things to make it work for this particular purpose.
Okay, thank you for that. And Konstantin makes a compliment to you. It is really inspired to listen to him and see his ambitions. Yes, that's true. It's a good comment, I think. And Konstantin said,
thank you.
And he said, we'll definitely subscribe. Okay.
Yay, nice.
Yes. We see us again, I think, later in the panel. It will be there really, impressed discussion there, I think, for us all, because I have some questions more inside in this rabbit hole, perhaps, and we will look there what's happened. And it's a pleasure to see you again later. Thank you so long, Mihai. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to this. Thank you again for inviting me, and a big thanks to Canton of Zug, Switzerland, and everyone that made this event possible. Wish you the best.
Best place ever.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers.